I'm Rick Harp. This is your APTN News Brief for Monday, April 15th. The dramatic allegations against the chief of the Lake St. Martin First Nation in Manitoba continue to draw reaction. Charged with several sex offenses involving a school-aged child, Chief Chris Travers is currently out on bail, with his next court appearance set for July 3rd. Here with what some of his fellow chiefs make of the controversy, T.R. Wheatley.
Winnipeg police confirmed Chief Chris Travers is charged with sexual assault, sexual interference, and making and possessing child pornography.
They are of a very serious nature.
Chief Cornell McLean of Lake Manitoba First Nation is the chair of the Interlake Reserves Tribal Council, a 7 First Nation member group to which Lake St. Martin is a member.
We just had a board meeting this afternoon with Anishinaabe Child and Family Services where he was a board of director. Today we suspended the membership of Lake St. Martin.
He says there are no policies when it comes to this type of situation within the tribal council. Meanwhile, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs put out a statement saying Travers cannot attend any Chiefs in Assembly meetings or events until the charges are resolved. Chief David Monias of the Pimichikamak Cree Nation is a trained social worker and in the past worked in the Child Advocacy Department for a few First Nations organizations, including the AMC. He understands that his fellow colleague is innocent until proven guilty, but welcomes the police investigation.
So as an advocate for me, I would say, if that's what's happening and they're doing their job, let them do their job, and let the process take its place and stuff like that. But I do not condone anybody hurting any children.
Meanwhile, Travers took to his personal Facebook page to maintain his innocence. He said that he's cooperated with the Winnipeg police throughout the investigation and has even made a request for a polygraph test. In that same post, he also addresses his membership, saying that he will overcome this obstacle and will continue to work for the community. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A one-time chief of the Thunder Bay Police Service was arrested Friday. Now, Sylvie Hoth stands charged with obstruction of justice, breach of trust, and obstruction of a peace officer. Part of a larger Ontario Provincial Police investigation that began in 2021, the charges came just days after those against former Thunder Bay Police Service lawyer Holly Walburn. Last Tuesday, OPP charged Walburn, who had left the service a year ago, with obstruction and breach of trust offenses. Ex-Chief Hoth has faced charges before, including discreditable conduct and deceit under the Police Services Act. Suspended at the time, her charges were later dismissed by the Ontario Civilian Police Commission in February 2023, when Hoth abruptly retired from the service. A priest accused of sexually abusing children during his time in Nunavut has died. And following a long illness, Johannes Revoir, a French oblate priest, died April 11th in Lyon, France. The 93-year-old's death was confirmed by the Oblates of Mary Immaculate. Counts against Revoir included one count of sexually assaulting a girl in Nunavut 40 years ago, with 4 similar counts involving other children dating back to the 1960s and 70s. Revoir long denied the allegations. The French government declined efforts to have him extradited to Canada to stand trial. A reminder that the National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available to survivors and others in need of support. Their number 1-866-925-4419.
Hi, I'm Dennis Ward, host of Face to Face. Coming up on our next episode, I'll be sitting down with Carrie Swanson, the CEO of the Indigenous Screen Office. We'll be discussing the excitement and big changes that have been happening on the screen and what stable funding will mean for future projects. Tune in Tuesday on APTN or listen to the Face to Face podcast. Download and subscribe on your favorite player.
To northern BC, where 2 people are dead and a third in hospital following last week's shooting on the Seke Dene First Nation, located more than 350 kilometers north of Prince George. Local RCMP say they responded to a late-night call of shots fired at a home with multiple injuries, and that a man with a gun had run into another house nearby. 5 hours of unsuccessful negotiations later, a chemical irritant was deployed, at which point the man fled the house, shot and subdued with what police call non-lethal force. The man was then transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The Independent Investigations Office is now looking into the incident. And finally, a coroner's inquest into the deaths of 4 Indigenous women at the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter continues this week. Here with a summary of the first week's proceedings, Sarah Connors.
The first half of the inquest mostly focused on the deaths of two Vuntagquitchin citizens who died at the shelter in January 2022, 35-year-old Cassandra Warville and 34-year-old Miranda Tija Charlie. According to a former supervisor who worked at the shelter at the time of the women's deaths, the two were allowed to enter a shower room together the night of January 18th. The supervisor found the women hours later, still in the shower room, unresponsive. They were later pronounced dead in the early morning hours of January 19th. Both died from toxic illicit drug use. Staff working that night testified they had little training outside of basic CPR and administering naloxone, nor did they notice any new policies after the women's deaths. Later in the week, the inquest turned its attention to the death of 38-year-old Josephine Hager, a citizen of the Selkirk First Nation. She was found unresponsive in a common area. She died during the early morning hours of February 1st, 2023. The week has also been incredibly emotional for these women's loved ones. There's been several interruptions during witnesses' testimonies, oftentimes with people shouting or cursing at witnesses. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Monday, April 15th. I'm Rick Harp.